Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to this video lesson. In this particular lab, we're going to learn about labels, text boxes, buttons, and this is also a label. And the idea of this program is to have the user enter in their first and their last name, and then when the user clicks submit, we're going to concatenate, which means put together, the word hello and then the person's first and last name. So in this case, since the user typed in Robert Solis, we click submit, it's going to say hello Robert Solis. When we click the quit button, it's going to close the application. Here are some of the various user requirements and the software requirements. And the idea of this wording requirements, you're going to see that a lot in industry. In other words, what does the user require in terms of how this program is supposed to work? What does the software require? What are the requirements of the boss? Maybe when he says, okay, I want to make sure that you name the labels, the buttons, and the text boxes appropriately. And then maybe some other requirements that the boss gives you in terms of how the software is supposed to work or how it's supposed to be assigned. Okay, so we have this sheet of paper here that we're going to use to help us design our program. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to open up Visual Studio. And so I'm going to be working with Visual Studio 2017. And let's go ahead and create a new C# program. And that means that we're going to go to File, New, and then Project. And let's go ahead and give this thing a name, but first I got to make sure to select the appropriate file type or the program type, which in this case is going to be a C# program. Your setup may look something like this. I have Visual C++ as my default language. So that means I've got to go to other languages and select Visual C#. So with Visual C# selected, then I can go ahead and click on the Windows Forms application, and then I can go ahead and create a name. In this case, I'll just type in CSharp Lab01. Notice that it's saving my files in the Documents folder, Visual Studio 2017, and then in the Projects folder. Now, because I'm running Windows on a Mac, that's why you see the word Mac here. You probably won't see this if you're running this on a Windows machine, or on a PC, I should say. All right, let me go ahead and click OK. Give it a couple seconds, and then eventually we're going to see a form that will be displayed. When that form is displayed, we can drag and drop components to it. Now, you'll notice that I have my toolbox over here on the left-hand side. You might have your toolbox on the right-hand side, or perhaps you might not even have a toolbox. Let me go ahead and close this, right? No toolbox. So in this case, to bring the toolbox back to life, I'll click View and then Toolbox. And so that's right here. Now, if you don't like the toolbox over here and you want the toolbox over here on this side, I'll just simply hover on top of the semi-transparent button, and here's the toolbox in this particular location. I, over the years, have just grown used to having this toolbox over here on the left-hand side, so I'm just simply going to put it back over here, just like that. All right, another panel that you're going to need is the Properties panel. Now, what if you don't see the Properties panel? So let me click X over here. No Properties panel tab over here. No Properties panel tab over here. We'll just simply go to View. Then I can go to Other Windows. And then over here, you'll see Properties window. Or you can press Alt-Enter. Again, where you have the Properties panel is not important. You can have it floating. You can have it over here. I like it over here personally. And it's just your personal preference. So from this point onward, do not click the X button for these various panels because it'll just close them. Instead, just click the push pin to make them disappear, or if you want to keep them intact, you click the push pin and so it keeps them intact so it doesn't automatically hide. In fact, you see that when I hover the mouse pointer over this, it says auto hide. Well, I don't want it to auto hide. I want it to stay in place, so we're going to keep it like that. Okay, over here in the control in the toolbox area, you'll see that most of these items here are probably collapsed, but if I select Common Controls, you'll see all of the various controls that are available over here. And what we want to do is we want to select Button, Tab over here, Label, I'm going to tap over here, and then Text Box, I'm going to tap over here. Okay, so now I have the controls that I'm going to be using, and I got them all from this Common Controls area. Over here in the Properties panel, I want you to select this guy over here where it says Alphabetical. So we're going to select alphabetical. You can also have them organized in this categorized methodology. But I personally like the alphabetical approach. So I'm going to select this guy. That way all of these properties for any of these given items are alphabetically sorted. Okay, I don't need the toolbox anymore, so I'm going to collapse that by clicking this auto hide push pin. And I notice that the font size for these guys are a little bit on the small side. So what I'll do is I'll select this guy. I'll go to font, and I'm going to double click on the size and type in the number 12. And so that increases the font size. I'm going to do the same thing over here for the button. And I'm going to double click over here, type in 12, press enter. Now the font size for the button has increased. Same thing over here. I'm going to type in the number 12, press enter. And now the font size has been increased for these three items. By the way, I could have just selected all these three items by touching them and then going to size. Let me type in 16, say, for example. And you can see here that the font size has changed. Let me go ahead and go back to 12 points. That looks good. Let me unselect by tapping over here. By the way, at this point, do not double-click anything. Double-clicking is a catastrophe, so don't double-click anything. I will explain at the end of this video how you can resolve double-clicking on a particular item that you're not ready for that yet. So at this point, just make sure you're single-clicking. Don't accidentally double-click any item. Okay, so let's take this label. I'm going to drag and drop it to the upper left-hand corner of the form. And you'll notice that when I drag and drop it to the upper left-hand corner of the form, you see those two little blue guidelines that appear. That's Microsoft's way of helping you say, hey, you know what, this is probably the best location if you're going to put this thing on the corner. The guidelines make it so that it just snaps right into place. I'm going to let go. Okay, so the requirements say that that should be the text first name with a colon right there. So what I'll do is I'll go over here to the text property, which says label 1. Yep, that's exactly what this guy says. Let me just double click over here where it says text, and I'll type in first, space, name, colon, press enter. When I press enter, now you'll see the first name label. Let's go ahead and take this text box. Let's move it into place. And so that's going to be like this. Notice these various guidelines appear. So there's a guideline over here. There's some guidelines over here. I think what I'll do is I'll just put it right here. What that magenta underline means is that the text that I'm about to type into the text box will be at the same level as the first name label. So that's exactly what I want. In fact, let me go ahead and open this up a little bit and make it so that it goes all the way to the right-hand side of the form, giving plenty of space for the person to type in their first and last name. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to do the same thing down here, but have it for the last name, the label, and also the text box. So what I'll do is I'll touch these two by clicking, holding down the mouse pointer, selecting these two, let go, and then I'll hit Control-C on the keyboard, Control-V on the keyboard. That's copy and paste. Let me move this into position. This looks good right here. I'm going to unselect by clicking down here, and then I'll select just this label by itself. Now this label needs to say last name, and so I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to go over here to the Properties panel, and I'll double click where it says text, and I'll type in last name, colon, enter. So now you see that this label by itself says last name. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want. All right, let me go back to the requirements. It looks like I'm supposed to have two buttons, a submit button and also a quit button. So what I'll do is I'll take this guy over here, move it to the upper left-hand corner. Something like that looks pretty good. Now that's obviously too big, right? By taking one of these resizing handles here, I can resize this. That's too big. So let me go to half and then just a little bit less than half. So that puts me at about right there. Maybe this button is a little bit too tall. What is this guy supposed to say? It's supposed to say submit. All right, so let me go over here to the text property, double tap, and type in the word submit. By the way, I double tap this so that I can select the entire text, but I could have easily just gone over here, backspace, 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 and then type in whatever the word is. In this case, it's supposed to be submit. All right, there's my submit button. I think what I'll do is I'll copy and paste this, put it over here, and create a quit button. So I'll take this guy, copy and paste, which is Control-C, Control-V as in Victor. Let me move this into place. You see how the guidelines are helping me out to position this thing. Let go. And that guy is going to say quit. Okay, so I select this, type in quit. Looks good. Looks like the last thing I'm supposed to do is to add a label. Notice how the label has this like 3D impression, like it's pressed into the form. So I think I'll just take this label over here. I could have simply gone to the text box, selected label, and then click over here. I could do that as well. Or I could just simply take this label, Control-C, Control-V as in Victor, that is copy and paste, and then move that into position. Now at this point, I can't resize this label. The only thing that I can do with this label is to move it around. In order to resize this thing, I've got to go over here to the Properties panel, and I've got to select Auto Size. Currently, that's set to true. Let me set that to false. By the way, if I double-click on this Auto Size, it toggles it from true to false, so I could do that as well. All right, now that I have the resizing handles, let me go ahead and resize this, and I'll make it so that it's over here like this. Maybe a little bit more space, similar to this space over here. Go all the way over here. That looks good. And I could make this thing tall. That's too tall. Maybe something like that looks good. Okay, that text is not good. I don't like that in the upper left-hand corner of this label. I want that to be in the middle, similar to the requirements over here. You notice that the text is in the middle vertically and horizontally. So what I'll do is I'll go down over here to the text align property, and I'll select this drop down. Now you can see why this thing is top left, because that's what's selected. I need this guy over here where it has middle center. All right, so with middle center selected, now you can see what happens to the text. It's in the middle horizontally and vertically. Now I'm going to make it so that this thing has a border, so I'll go over here to the top to the border style. Currently it's set to none, but I'm going to select fixed 3D. So I select fixed 3D, and when I unselect it, you see the three-dimensional effect that this label has. It looks like it's pressed into the form. All right, one more thing to do. Let me reselect the label, and I'm going to go over here to the text property, and I'm going to get rid of the text. So I can just simply double-click and hit backspace, press enter, and it gets rid of the text. Okay, let me reduce the size of this form by selecting the form first of all. So I just select it here or somewhere in this blank area, and I get these resizing handles, and I could change it with one of these three resizing handles, and I'm going to do something like this. That looks pretty good right there. I don't want the minimize, I don't want the maximize button, say for example. So with the form selected, you'll notice maximize box and minimize box, they are both set to true. Changing those to both false, I'll double tap, double tap. Changing those to both false, minimize and maximize the box are gone. Okay, the requirements say enter your name is supposed to be the text for this form. So let me go down over here to the text property, and instead of form 1, enter your name. Press enter on the keyboard, and there it is. Let me go ahead and click Save All to save my work. So that means clicking this button over here. I'm going to click Save All. All right, so now you are finished with the graphical user interface portion of this program, which means the GUI, graphical user interface, or sometimes people say GUI. This is what the user sees. This is how the user will interface with this particular program graphically. We're finished with that, but now I need to create some of the various names for the various elements that I'll be using. So let's start off with this text box. Let me go back to the requirements, and you'll notice that this thing says that for the label, it's supposed to be this. For these two text boxes, this is the name, or these are the names, and then for the buttons, these are the names. So for the text box, we're supposed to use the name txt first name. All right, so for this guy, let me go back over here to the top, and here's the name property. You see that it already has a name, text box 1. Personally, I'm old school, so all graphical elements, I'm going to give them a Hungarian notation prefix. The Hungarian notation prefix basically just simply means that all text boxes have a prefix of txt, all buttons have the prefix btn, all labels have the prefix lbl in terms of these graphical elements. So for this text box, I know it's called text box 1. I'm going to do this. I'm going to type in txt. And this thing is for the user's first name, so I'll type in txt first name. Notice that I can't have any spaces. I can't start this thing off with a number. I'm using this camel approach, which means that every new letter is going to be capitalized and everything else is lowercase. So I press enter. So now this button, this text box has the name txt first name. Let me go ahead and do the same thing with this text box. So again, I'll select it, and what is it supposed to be called? Well, in accordance to the requirements, we're supposed to use txt last name. Okay, so txt last name. Press enter. All right, we're done. Let's go ahead and give a name to this button, and let's see, that's supposed to be BTN Submit. Okay, so I go over here and let's call that BTN Submit. And then finally for the Quit button, that is supposed to be BTN Quit. Okay, so I go back over here, BTN Quit. And then finally we have this label down here that we have to name. We're going to call that LBL Result. Okay, so over here, LBL Result. Now you may be thinking, hey, wait a minute, Professor Solis, you didn't give a name to this label or to this label. Well, of course, they already have a name, but I didn't give to it a Hungarian notation name. And the reason why is because these labels don't change. So if these labels don't change, it's not necessary for me to assign a name to them or to assign a Hungarian notation name to them, because I'm never going to refer to them programmatically. This label, on the other hand, I am going to be referring to this label programmatically. I'm going to be displaying the word hello Robert Solis, if I type in Robert Solis over here, hello Robert Solis, when I click this button. So that's why I give this guy a Hungarian notation LBL. Okay, let me go ahead and select, or save all, I should say, by clicking this button over here, save all. And now I'm ready to apply the code to the various buttons. So let's start off with the easy one first, and that's the Quit button. You see that we've already given it the name BTN Quit. So let me double click on that button, and it takes me into the code area. Now don't worry about what all of this other stuff means. We're going to get into that throughout the duration of the semester. But the one thing that you need to understand is when you double click a button, it takes you into a chunk of code that is responsible for that particular button click. What is the name of this function or this procedure? Well, the name is BTN Quit underscore click. In other words, when the user clicks the Quit button, do the following. Well, right now there's nothing here. We're going to type in some code in just a minute, but this is the chunk of code that will be executed when you click the Quit button. Notice the open and close curly braces. You can think of these as bookends, right? So if I have a stack of books on the top of the shelf, I have one bookend that holds one side, I have another bookend that holds the other side. So this is like the beginning and the end of this chunk of code that we're going to give a specific name to it. And it's called BTN click underscore click. Well, what do I want to do? I want to close the program. So if I type in CLO, and in fact, I don't even have to type any more letters. Microsoft's IntelliSense, intelligent sensing, is showing me a list of commands that I may be interested in. And sure enough, yeah, that's this one right here called close. I'll double click it, and then I'm going to open and close parentheses, and then I'm going to terminate this thing with a semicolon. All right, so what this chunk of code does is it closes the program when the user clicks this button. Let's see what happens. So let me go ahead and click the start button, give it a couple seconds, and when the program runs, we're going to click the Quit button to see if this actually works. So once it's compiled the program, here it is. I can move this thing around. Notice that the program is running. Down over here at the bottom here, I can see that I've got a program running. Okay, so yeah, this is the program that I'm running right here. All right, I'm going to click the Quit button. When I click this button, it should close the program. So let's see what happens when I click Quit. Sure enough, we're not running anymore. We've just closed the program. You can see down here in this taskbar area, the program is not running anymore. This output panel will display after you finish executing the program. I close it. When you run a program, you're probably going to see over here the diagnostic tools. You'll see this thing running about. I usually don't use this, so I just simply minimize that over here to the side. Oh, sorry. I just simply minimize it like that. Here's my program. It's currently running. Let me go ahead and quit it. And I'm going to close the output panel. Okay, so now we've just finished entering the code for the Quit button. Let's do the same thing now by going to the Design panel. And we're going to apply the code for the Submit button. And what is this thing supposed to do? We're supposed to take the person's first name and last name that they enter into here, and we're supposed to concatenate or add to or connect to the word hello in the very front. Okay, let me go ahead and double click on Submit. So here we are. What is it that I want to do? I want to display hello Robert Solis, and I want to place it into this label. Oh, what's the name of that label? I forgot. Hey, don't worry about it. Just type in LBL, because you've already given all of the appropriate labels a prefix, a Hungarian notation prefix of LBL. So now we have LBL result. Let me go ahead and hit tab, or I can just simply select that LBL result. And now the property that I'm interested in, so the property is .te. Look at that, I don't even have to type anymore. It already comes up with text, so I'm simply going to double click. I am interested in putting something into the text property of this label. So I know this looks like equals, but that in this context is not equals. We call this the assignment operator. What this means is put the right-hand side stuff into the text property of LBL result. In English, we are used to reading from left to right. When we use this operator, I want you to get used to reading from right to left. So what are we going to put into here? Well, let's just start off with something simple. Let's put the word hello, and I'm going to terminate this thing with a semicolon. So the way that you would read this, let me translate from C# to English. This is how you would do it. Place the word hello, or assign the word hello, into the text property of this particular label. So let's see what happens when we run the program. So now, when I click submit, right, when I click submit, put hello into the text property of this label. Let's see. There it is, hello. Wonderful. All right, let me quit the program. Well, that's not all we want to do, right? We also want to have the person's first name and the person's last name. So let's start off with the person's first name. So what I'll do is I'll enter this plus symbol. Now I know that you know this is typically for addition, but in this context, we call this the concatenation operator. The concatenation operator just simply means to put together the left and the right-hand side. Well, what should be the right-hand side? It should be the person's first name that they typed into here. Oh, there's a name for that text box. What was the name of that text box? It was txt something. Ah, there it is. All I have to do is type in txt, and then I see first name and last name. Well, I want this guy right here, so I'm going to double click. All right, what is it from this text box that I want? .te. Ah, I want the text property. So let me just type or double click this guy. Get the person's text from this text box, which in my case, it's going to be Robert. Concatenate that to the word hello and assign that to the text property of this label. So let me go ahead and put a semicolon over here, and let's run the program. And let me go ahead and type in Robert and press submit. Hello, Robert. Fantastic. It took the person's first name, concatenated that to the word hello, which is what this line of code does, and then it placed it into the label. The only problem is there's no space in between here. So let me quit the program, and I'm going to put a space right here. So all strings have a open and close double quote right here. By putting a space right here, this is part of the initial text that will be concatenated with this. And by the way, the next thing to do is to concatenate this with txt, the person's last name, double tap, .te, yep, the text property, double tap, put a semicolon over here. I know what you guys are thinking, hey, there's no space in between here. Good for you if you saw that. We'll take care of that in just a moment. Let me run the program. All right, let me type in Robert, tab, Solis, and then I'm going to click on the submit button. Hello, Robert Solis. Wonderful, but shoot, no space in between there. No problem, we can take care of that. So let me quit the program. What I'm going to do is to place a space right here in the following way. Quote, space, close quote. Don't forget, I need another one of these concatenation operators right here, because basically what I'm saying is this. Connect these two. Connect these two. Connect these two, right? So this is connecting, or we say concatenating. Well, let's see what happens. Click start. Let me type in Robert Solis. Click submit. Hello, Robert Solis. Perfect. Whatever the person's first and last name is, it will concatenate those. So let's say Joshua. Hello, James Joshua. How about Jackson Paul? Submit. Hello, Jackson Paul. Great, it works. Okay, so this is what the code looks like. Let me minimize this. We don't need that. This is what the code looks like in order to concatenate a bunch of strings together and then assign them to the text property of this particular label. Now, I just said that word, strings. What is a string? String, text, text, string. They're synonyms. A string is a text is a string. It just simply means that it's something that's either enclosed in quotation marks like this, or it's the text property of something. Okay, another aspect of the program that we need to work on is the association of the enter key with the submit button and the escape key on your keyboard with the quit button. All right, how do I do this? Let's go back to the design tab. And oh, by the way, maybe you don't like this approach where we have these two tabs connected together like this. Perhaps you like it where maybe you can take this thing, drag it, and let's do like a split screen setup. Maybe you want this, where you have the code in one screen and the design tab on the other screen. You could do it this way. If you don't like that, you can just simply put it right next to each other like that, and then you have them set up next to each other. What if you accidentally close this? Hey, Professor Solis, where's my code? Well, that's where the Solution Explorer comes in. Let me accidentally close the Solution Explorer. Hey, Professor Solis, I don't see a Solution Explorer. No problem. Click View, Solution Explorer. There it is. Let me go ahead and click this push pin so it stays intact. You see over here where it says form1.cs. Double click on that. There's your form. Double click, of course, on any of the buttons. It takes you into the code area. I don't need the Solution Explorer anymore, so I'm going to auto hide this, and here we go. Okay, so back to our question of how do I assign the submit button to the enter key, and how do I form this type of relationship between the quit button and the escape key on my keyboard? Well, the first thing you've got to do, it seems kind of unintuitive, but you've got to select the form. Let's go ahead and open up the properties panel. Let me tack this in place. Go back to the top, and I'm going to look for the accept button and the cancel button properties. Now, for the accept button, you see here in the quick description over here, it says the accept button of the form. If this is set, the button is clicked whenever the user presses the enter key. So in other words, we are establishing a relationship between the enter key and btn submit. That's what accept button does. For the cancel button, it says if this property is set, the button is clicked whenever the user presses the escape key. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to establish a relationship between the escape key on the keyboard and btn quit. So now when I run the program, so I'm going to move this program over here. I'm going to place my mouse pointer over here. Watch what happens when I press the escape key. Now you can't see me pressing the escape key on the keyboard, but I'm about to do that. I am not going to click on quit, but I'm going to press escape 3, 2, 1, and it quits the program. All right, let's run the program again. And let me go ahead and move my mouse pointer over here so you can see I'm not using it. Actually, let me click inside here first. Now I'm going to move my mouse pointer over here. Type in Robert, tab Solis. Now I'm not going to click this button. I'm going to press enter on the keyboard, 3, 2, 1. And now notice what happens. It's as if I clicked this button. So pressing enter is the same thing as clicking this. Pressing escape on the keyboard is the same thing as clicking this. So in fact, let me press escape on the keyboard, and now the program is no longer running. All right, so that is how you create a program based on these user requirements. We've talked about the buttons, the labels, the text boxes, associating a button with escape, associating another button with enter. One last thing that I'd like to talk about is making a mistake, like maybe double clicking a button when you weren't ready to do so. So for example, let's say that I want to place another button over here, and I'll just take a toolbox, I'll click a button over here, and I'll place it over here on the form. Let me just go ahead and move this into place, something like this. Okay, now I haven't given this button a name over here. I haven't changed its text property. I accidentally double click it. Watch this. Double click. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I have to give this thing a name like btn quit, btn submit, btn something. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this code. Bam. When you got rid of that code, which, I mean, you're supposed to do that if you made a mistake, but here's what's going to happen when you go back to the design tab. It won't let you because an error has occurred. What error has occurred? Well, let's see. Let me go ahead and click on this. And it says, you expect me to go to btn1 click, but you just got rid of it. So this thing doesn't exist. If you get this, what you'll do is you'll just erase that one line of code. Get rid of it. All right, let's go back over here to the design tab. Here we go. All right, so what we want to do is we want to take that button 1 and we want to say, okay, I want you to call this btn something, and I want you to go to this particular text property and call it something, and then you can continue from here. But really, the best thing to do is don't double click something until you're ready. Now, I do it all the time. I'm moving my mouse really fast and I accidentally double click on a button or a text box or a label that I didn't want to do that. Now you know how to deal with that problem. You just simply erase that one line of code. In fact, I don't want this button, so I'll just take this and I'm going to push backspace, or on the Mac I have to hit function delete. Let me go ahead and get rid of this space over here. Will my program still work? Let's see. Start the program. And let's go ahead and put, wait, by the way, did you notice that the cursor isn't blinking here? The cursor really should be blinking there, and then I can type in Robert, tab, Solis, and then press enter on the keyboard and then have this. So let's make it so that the cursor blinks on that text box. And so how are we going to do that? Well, that deals with tab stop and tab index. So I will select this text box first. Go down over here. Tab stop, yes, I want you to stop. When I press tab, it's okay to stop at this text box. But I want this to be my first tab index, so I'll type in 0. You know, we computer scientists, we like starting counting from 0. And so that's why I'm doing that. The tab index is 0, meaning we are going to start from this particular text box. And then, if I hit tab, I want to go to this text box over here. So let me select that. The tab index should be 1 for this. Press enter. Do I want to go here to the button? No, I do not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say tab stop. No, false. No stopping here at this button. For this text box, no stopping over here. So let me change that to false. And now, I don't have to worry about the labels, by the way, because there is no such thing as tabbing to that. Now I can go ahead and run the program, and let's see what happens. So, good. The cursor is blinking there at first. Name. Let me hit tab. There it is. Last name. Let me hit tab again. Great. It just goes back to the first name, which is what I want. So Robert, tab, Solis, enter. Hello, Robert Solis. Looks good. Press escape on the keyboard. That stops the program. Perfect. We are in good shape. Okay, so you learned about a little bit about everything. You know, slow, really slow. We're going to start off slow. We'll get faster and faster and develop more complicated programs as we continue through this course. So this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.